I landed a $40,000 project, and honestly, it almost broke my agency. Not because of the work itself, the system I'd be using for years just simply couldn't handle it anymore. So the first week went perfectly fine. The second week is where everything fell apart. I ended up rebuilding the entire thing in Notion afterwards, all the checklist and the workflows that would have saved me, and I made it into a free kit if you guys want to check it out below. So for years, I had the same exact workflow for many different projects. And the issue is that it was only a few $1,000s here, maybe 10,000 there, but it was the same setup every single time. It was one shared folder, one task board, and one approval chain. That way it was super simple. It was repeatable and it always worked perfectly fine. We had this rhythm set in stone from honestly years and years now. So the way it worked was client briefs went into one doc, design files lived in another folder, and then feedback came through a single Slack channel. Everyone knew exactly where everything was supposed to be and what they were supposed to do. It wasn't fancy at all. It was one of those things that just worked. So we'd always be closing projects in 2 to 3 weeks, and the clients were always happy and the team was never stressed. It was a super easygoing setup. And I thought we basically figured the agency model out pretty much by then. But then this new project came in at $39,750. It was almost 4 times bigger than anything that we had realistically done before. But on paper, it looked exactly the same. It was the same deliverables, the same timeline, the same structure, and the same type of client. So I didn't really think that changing anything was in order, and I just tried to run it the exact same way that we always had. And I remember thinking that this was finally going to be our moment at my agency. Like, this was proof that we were finally ready for the next level, for bigger budgets and bigger clients, like for example, the Nikes, the Coca-Colas, all those tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands type of project. And I thought we were actually ready for that. And initially we were. The first week was actually completely fine. The files were organized, Slack was pretty quiet, and the client initially was more than happy. And I thought we had sort of figured it out, but by week 2, everything completely collapsed. Messages started piling up everywhere. Revisions kept multiplying across different files. Notifications honestly just didn't stop. It was like Slack, email, Figma, comments, client texts, everything just started to scale and bundle, and it was honestly becoming a little bit unbearable. That's when we all realized at my team that the client we had set up for years just didn't make sense for this scale of project, because everything changes when you start to scale with these types of projects. It's not just more work, it's more people involved, it's bigger budget. That means higher expectations. That means more stakeholders, more opinions. Everybody has their fingers in the pie, from people from marketing to design. Absolutely everybody has to say something about the project. So small delays that used to be fine, like waiting a day for feedback or having one revision cycle take a little bit longer, was suddenly turning into chaos, because when you're working with 4 times the budget, everyone cares 4 times as much about every single decision. Everything is scrutinized, from button angles to text variables, absolutely everything. And we were already too deep into this project to try to rebuild our systems from scratch. So the client was expecting progress, deadlines were set, and deposits obviously were paid by now. So we had to make it work with what we had. At first, I had trusted this process because it had worked like 40 different times. I kept telling myself and the team, we know how to do this, just keep going. But then feedback doubled. What used to be 1 or 2 round revisions suddenly turned into 3 and then 4, and everything kept getting worse and worse. And honestly, the client wasn't being difficult or anything. They had just more invested. So I think it's natural that they just cared a lot more, which honestly makes sense. But our system wasn't built for that level of iteration just yet. So I did what most founders do, which is when things start to slip, I try to make sure that everything passed through me first. I tried to grab control of everything. That means I started to manage every single detail myself, thinking that my contribution would actually speed things up, because of course, founders know better than everyone all the time. And obviously that's not true. I jump into every conversation, every design file, every review, just to double check everything was right and had to be exactly how I wanted it. So I thought that would make it faster, but obviously it did the exact opposite. Every hour, someone needed something from me. Can you approve this? Should we go with option A or option B? The client just replied, what should we tell them? So I was everywhere, but somehow nothing was actually moving forward. Revisions came in faster than we could actually handle them at that point. And honestly, it was just a vicious cycle. The calls started stacking up. The client wanted more check-ins. There were emergency chats every second of the day. And honestly, comments just started to pile up in the Figma file. So as you can imagine, I was completely overwhelmed and honestly on the edge of burnout. I decided to stop designing completely, just entirely, because I couldn't even look at the project without feeling like I didn't want anything to do with it anymore. And instead of designing now as I was supposed to, my entire job just became basically being a housekeeper, just trying to make sure that everything was in order and didn't break at all. So I wasn't even creating anymore. I was just coordinating and trying to keep everybody in line. And so the worst part in all of this is that even though it was the biggest project that we've ever done, I started resenting the hell out of the project. So this project that I was so excited about, trying to get into the big leagues, became this massive burden that I was just trying to get rid of. So I had the great idea that to regain more control of the project, I started to add more structure. I thought that maybe the issue was that we needed more and better organization. So I built out spreadsheets to track every single deliverable. I set up trackers for client feedback. I created dashboards to visualize our progress. All of it's in Notion, by the way. And so each one of these files that I created, I tried to bring clarity to the entire project, because when there's so many people involved, you want to make sure that everybody is able to see the progress at the same time. But now the issue was that since I'd created so many different files and so many different structures, that the team started asking me where things lived now. For example, should this tracker be on this board? Should I update this spreadsheet? Should I do this document? No one even knew where to look anymore because I'd created 5 different sources of truth. So now half of my day went to organizing everything, updating different trackers, moving tasks between boards, or copying information from one place to another so that everybody had visibility. The other half of the day went to apologizing for delays. So for example, sorry that we're still waiting on this review, sorry that the message got buried, I didn't see it, sorry that someone else was handling that and I thought it was going to be done in time. And so the more that I tried to track everything, the less that I actually understood what was even happening in the project. I had all this data, but necessarily no clarity. I could tell you exactly how many revisions we'd done, but I couldn't actually tell you if the project was on track to being finished in time. And so that's when it actually hit me that big projects don't fail because the design is bad. They fail because the systems are bad, not the design. So too many inputs, not enough trust, everybody trying to steer the same ship, but no one's actually clear on who's driving. Hope you guys like that metaphor. I'd been so focused on maintaining control that I accidentally created this massive bottleneck where everything had to go through me. And I'd added so much different structure trying to create clarity that it actually just made everything way worse and more confusing. And so thankfully this happened, which is that halfway through the project, I stopped pretending that we were actually in control and gonna make the deadlines. What we actually needed instead of more was gonna be a less structure, less chaos. So I decided to delete almost half of our stack completely overnight. All those trackers and dashboards and everything that I built, I decided to get rid of them. I merged everything into a single workspace that everyone could actually see and understand. And that way the source of truth was simplified, roles were simplified, everyone understood and knew what they were responsible for. So no more chaos, at least I thought so. So the design lead owned all the creative decisions, project manager owned all the client communications and the timeline, and then the developer and designer owned the more technical stuff. So I decided to basically give back control to the team, and I told them to make the calls in the area that they work in, and that, you know what, I completely trust you. At this point, if the project goes sideways, at first it felt risky, like I was losing my grip on everything, and I kept wanting to jump back in to double check things, but then I forced myself to kind of step back, and that's when things actually started to move again. So design files actually started getting done in time, the progress showed up without me trying to chase anybody, and without me in every single thread, people decided to solve the problems on their own. So by me removing myself, it ended up moving way faster. So decisions that used to take 2 different days because they'd be sitting in my queue while I handled other fires started happening in 2 hours. So that was absolutely amazing. Now, it wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to get things rolling, to have a little bit more momentum. And honestly, most of the things that I think should have been changed didn't get changed in the end because they were moving past me in faster deadlines. And the client was happy either way. So that was absolutely fantastic. For the first time in weeks, Slack actually went quiet again. Not because people gave up or checked out, but because they were already focused on doing the work instead of coordinating with me. So that silence actually felt like complete trust from the team and from the client. It meant that everybody knew exactly what they had to be doing and they didn't need constant validation. When you first hire people, you're going to realize that that's all a lot of people want when they first start in these roles. So apart from that massive deleting episode that I had, there wasn't a massive dramatic moment that changed everything. We just tried to merge and narrow everything down so that things could run a lot smoother. We also started to have internally less meetings, which allowed people to work more and actually get things done in time. At the end of the day, we do a little check-in on Slack to make sure that everything was fine, and that's it. By the time that we launched the client project, everything felt back to normal again. Everything was simple and super predictable, and that's when the stress starts to fade away, because when things are predictable, there isn't necessarily any anxiety to come with that. And so even though we almost died trying to get this done in time, the client actually referred us to another client that had a similar budget, so we were able to kind of move forward and move past this pretty quickly. But internally, we knew that we barely even made it. So that leads me to kind of the big knowledge here, which is that structure isn't about control. It's about giving people the space to move and create without any crazy structure. And that's what gives teams that sort of flow that people can just make whatever they need and you don't need to be there every step of the way. And that's going to allow you to scale and to be much larger. There's this line in Atomic Habits that describes it perfectly, which is you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your systems. Ambition gets you the project, systems finish it. To put that into context, you can be the most talented designer in the world, but if your systems can't handle the work, you'll burn out before you even get to deliver. Or worse, you'll deliver, but it'll look like shit and it'll destroy you in the process. So a $40,000 project or 10,000 or whatever you're at right now, which is the next goal, that goal isn't a matter of luck. It's proof that your systems and your structure makes sense so that you can scale to that. It's not about just, oh, look, here's a $100,000 project. I hope that we can do it. That's not ever how it's going to work. So after that job, I rebuilt everything from the ground up. I sat down and we wrote everything, every single process that actually worked during this project. Every file structure that made sense, every workflow that kept things moving when everything else was falling apart. We documented the entire system from the ground up. And so this project became the foundation for the system that we now teach at the Ross Design Academy, where we help designers create structure in their programs and actually become professional freelancers. There's a quick link in the description if you want to check it out. Because here's the thing, most design courses and design in general is going to teach you how to actually design the technical part, but no one actually teaches you how to go from 0 to 100 as a freelancer. If you're tired of projects breaking the moment that they scale, that's where I would start. It's literally the system that I wish we had before that 40K job. And all the templates, all the processes, all the lessons are going to be inside there. We also simplified everything in Figma. We have clean handoffs with minimal layers, and it's a lot more organized now that we have Tilebit. And we also started using Framer so that we have faster launches because the turnaround time is going to be a little bit lower than if we use Webflow or something else for those larger projects. That project became the blueprint for what we teach now, not because it went perfectly, but because it went horribly wrong. And it allowed me to get the lessons that I need to actually teach something valuable. Without that, it's just noise and it's just any designer can make a course. Now, every designer or every creative is gonna hit this wall eventually. You're gonna get to a point where the work grows more than your system can handle. And if you're landing bigger clients and more ambitious projects and suddenly the workflow isn't good enough to kind of take you to the next level, you either adapt or you burn out trying to hold everything together. And I see a lot of talented designers burn out, not because they can't do the work, but because they can't handle control the systems. There's nothing there to kind of keep you in check. If you're going to go for bigger and bigger projects, make sure that your systems are ready first. You don't need my course, but make sure that the system that you're going to implement for these larger, more ambitious projects actually makes sense and can hold the weight of what you're about to do, because you don't want to be left holding the bag, drowning in burnout and having to give back the project. That's going to be the worst case scenario. That's what's going to be the difference between drowning or trying to stay above water and actually succeeding long-term at freelancing. And that's what I want to help designers build.